Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Cookie Jar Golf Podcast. I am Tom Mills and today I'm joined by Sam Williams and we are joined by DJ Piehowski from No Laying Up. In this pod we chat to DJ about his role in No Laying Up and the latest series of Tourist Source, and the film's just been done at Kapalua with JT and Jordan Spieth. I've been wanting to catch up with DJ for a while now because he is the film czar over at No Laying Up, and I wanted to pick his brains about filming and the process of things they go through over there, and I think it's a fascinating insight as to how they operate, and I think you'll enjoy.
Watch this. No way!
Your week's been fairly busy by the looks of it.
Very busy. Yeah, I didn't know if I was going to be up at like 2 a.m. or I didn't know if I was going to sleep until noon today, but it was, I had a red eye coming back from Hawaii, and long week, but all good stuff, which is good.
Has that been in the diary for a while?
Sort of. It's funny. We were planning just to shoot with Justin when we got over there, and then all this title stuff kind of came together, and it was a very natural fit. And Justin came to us and was like, "Hey, I hope you guys don't mind, but I'm traveling with Jordan. Like, do you think it'd be okay if Jordan joined us as well?" We're like, "Oh, I don't know. Let me see how many mics we have. We can see if we can make it work." So it was in the books for a little bit, but it just kind of kept getting better and better, which was fun. So
unbelievable turning the film around so quick. How long did you have in the edit room on that?
We shot that on the what did we shoot that? We shot that on the 31st, and then we had what did we do? We had the first to work on it, and then we had another shoot all day on the second, and then we had the third to work on it. So it was like I don't know, probably like 36 hours, and then it kind of had to be done. Didn't have to, but it has to come out kind of like during tournament week, and then the tour was very good about us, allowing us to film it on site and all of that stuff. The one thing that they don't really want is like, well, don't like put it out while we have competitive golf going on, which is a very fair ask. So it kind of needed to be done Wednesday night. So yeah, it's kind of, once you know the deadline, you kind of just gotta make it work. So it worked out okay.
I mean, the filming is something we're going to touch on hopefully in the as this goes on. But I mean, 36 hours to work on something that's long, like an hour. That's tricky.
It is. And I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you guys feel this as well, but sometimes it's almost harder to make it short, right? Like when you have something like that, it's easy to just string it out. And luckily the mic packs that we use and stuff is all running on time code. So it's like everything's kind of synced already. So you're kind of just taking it from here to here, which is quote unquote kind of like the easy part, and then where it gets really hard is taking it from like here to here, and obviously that was kind of one where we're like, well, listen, like we're not going to have these guys a ton in our videos, so more is probably better than less. Let's just kind of leave it fat and chunky and all of that stuff. We always like to joke, I don't know if we started recording already, or if I'm burning all my gems here off mic, but we always like to say that, like, we're not as esoteric and kind of punchable as this might sound. We're not really like a media company. We're almost more like a band, right? And there's kind of 5 of us that are more like the dynamics of like how a band would operate than like a media company. And so this one, we're like, well, we'll just picture this as like a live album, right? It's kind of like, it's kind of chunky and unorganized and organic, and there's going to be some mistakes and things aren't going to sound quite as good, but sometimes that's better. So that was, at least gave me a little bit more peace about putting it out there.
Well, we got that gem on mic, didn't we? So that
good. Okay,
you haven't wasted it, DJ.
Don't have to say that one twice. Okay.
Don't panic.
As soon as you went on, the immediate record started, because we don't know what's going to come up. But thank you very much for agreeing to come on and speak to us. I know that you've got a crazy schedule at the moment and stuff. While we're talking about that filming and like you just said, the live album, do you find sometimes it's difficult? So I think something that we struggle with a little bit is trying to the quest for perfect, I suppose. And it's difficult to just be satisfied with I think this is good enough to go out, because you've got time restraints and you've got deadlines you need to hit. Have you got to sometimes just think, yeah, okay, this is good enough. Let's get it out.
Yeah, and I think that there's a couple different ways to go with that, but I think like where we have almost been our own best friend and our own worst enemy is that we don't really know what we're doing on anything, and that has caused us to instill some outrageous deadlines on ourselves to the point where, like, kind of what I was saying with the Hawaii stuff is like, we're getting a little better at it now, and you can kind of see around the corner and like, okay, that's going to take this long and that's going to take X, and we're trying to build in more downtime and stuff. But especially when you get into like a tourist sauce season or something like that, which is like the big travel kind of travel show that we do on YouTube, we start out with the greatest of intentions and like, okay, we're going to start working on this thing months in advance, and by the time episode 1 comes out, episode 7's already going to be done, and that works for a while, and eventually you just kind of start catching yourself and eating your own tail, and you just like get to a point where it's just like, all right, fuck it, it's done. Like it's done because it has to come out tomorrow. So a lot of those like self-imposed deadlines I think can almost be helpful for us, because the stuff where we do take a lot of time, like, I don't know that it necessarily always, I think it comes out looking and sounding a little better, right? Like it's a little more polished and it's a little more kind of like perfect, quote unquote, but that almost always comes at the soul of, or at the cost of like some of that soul. And I think why a lot of people like our stuff is it does feel very organic, and it feels like it was produced by, it feels like that's what it would look like if you and your buddies went out and like produced something. And I think I always saw that for a long time as like a negative, right? Of like, oh God, like I wish it would look like, like someone who actually knew what they were doing produced it. But I think I've kind of leaned into that and accepted that a lot more as like a positive rather than a negative over the years. And so it's kind of hard to do that sometimes when you're the one kind of pushing publish, or you're the one in the edit trying to make it look and sound as good as possible. And it's also hard, I'm sure you guys know from doing this, it's, that's kind of been the feedback from a lot of people is like, oh, we don't really care like what it looks like, just put it out faster. And it's really hard. It's really hard when you are sitting there in the edit and that like, oh man, if I just took another hour, this would not look this way anymore, or I could fix the color on this, or I could, like, once you see the issues, like I think back in the day, this was never a problem for me because I didn't really know what I didn't know, and I didn't know what the issues were. And so it was just kind of like, oh, I don't know, this looks as good as I can do, just put it out there. And it's almost like the more you learn about, I didn't go to film school or photography school or anything like that. So it's almost like the more you learn about cameras and editing and, storytelling to an extent, the more warts you kind of see on everything. And that's where it gets really hard to actually like start to ignore that stuff and consciously put it out with all that in there. But I don't know, that's a long rambling answer, but I think all of that kind of adds up to putting out something that kind of checks all of those boxes. Like, is it timely? Is it good enough? Can people see and hear what's going on? All right, then let's put it out there.
DJ, I'm conscious that we've kind of rolled into the weeds here pretty quickly, and I've got a high degree of faith that a lot of people listening to this pod know of you and your band already. But for those that don't, how would you best summarize, I guess, No Laying Up, what you do, what your role is, and maybe a little bit about how you got there as well? Because I think I don't know all of that stuff, and I'd be quite curious.
Sure. So we are, I know we just said, I just got done saying we're not a media company, but that probably is the best way to describe it to anybody who's never heard of it. We are a golf company is the easiest way to say it. We have I think probably our most trafficked thing, or our best well-known thing, is our podcast. We put out a podcast twice a week that covers the pro game, recreational golf architecture, kind of whatever the news of the day is. That's called the No Laying Up podcast. And then where I fit in is I kind of, in addition to being a sometimes guest on that podcast, I am kind of like our video EP. So I kind of help get all the video stuff out the door, from concepting to shooting to editing to, whatever kind of needs to be done. And luckily that's been a little bit more dispersed over the past couple of years, and kind of getting some more help and having everybody else on the team kind of feel a little more comfortable with taking stuff on. And I think that's really why our stuff has started to look and sound a lot better, is getting more hands on it. But that's kind of what I do. As far as background, I have been in golf for, man, like a sneaky long time. I'm starting to realize how old I'm getting now, but I graduated college in 2010, started working for Golf Week magazine.
Okay.
For a couple years after that, starting right there in the fall of 2010, which was really funny doing the video with Jordan and Justin. I think I met both of them when they were like 15 or 16, because Golf Week used to do this, like, I mean, they still do to an extent, but they used to have a really awesome college and junior golf coverage program where like they were kind of the leaders in that space of covering like, here's who's coming up next. Type of stuff. And so the first time I remember I was an intern at Golf Week, and there was this tournament. I think it was the FootJoy Invitational. It was like this big AJGA, kind of like an AJGA major. And I remember all the other kind of people that I worked with who all have gone on to, now they work at the PJ Tour and Golf Channel and all these people. The Golf Week Young Alumni Club is pretty visible in the golf world now. But I remember they were like, oh, this kid from Kentucky won. Like, he's not ever going to win anything else. Like, we got to get some quotes from him. Just have DJ call him. And that was Justin Thomas. And so like, it's kind of funny now just seeing like the whole arc of their careers. And anyways, that's a side tangent. So I worked there for a couple of years.
As a tangent, why did he get dismissed? Why was he like, he's just won something, it's not going to be a...
Well, honestly, I think it was a lot of like, you could kind of
in the air impact or what?
You could kind of see even in those days, like, the guys were Jordan and Patrick Rogers and Emiliano Grillo and a lot of these guys who have like gone on to amazing careers. But I think Justin was one that, was definitely, I don't want to say late bloomer, like obviously went on to do amazing things in junior golf and college golf. But I think he was just a little slower on that track. And he wasn't from Texas. He wasn't from California. He wasn't from Florida. He was from Kentucky. And I think it just took a tiny bit longer. And that was kind of like his first big win. So I think he just wasn't quite on the radar yet, but he was still 14 or 15 years old, something like that. So
does that
very
stuff
shortly
matter?
After that.
Does that stuff matter, like where you're from, in terms of, is it like the exposure to the golf, or what does that matter?
I think it's just easier to get on the radar, right? Like it's easier because I think there's a lot more tournaments in those places. So, for someone like Justin, who, like, everybody always likes to say, like, oh God, his dad's a PGA professional, and he grew up as this country club kid. I don't totally know that was the case. I mean, I think he came from like a very normal family, very normal golf course, and they're just not having a lot of like super world-class tournaments in Goshen, Kentucky, right? Whereas Jordan is growing up in Dallas, and there was a lot, like Anthony Palucci, I remember, was like this amazing junior player of that same class and in that same ilk, and he's in Southern California, and there's just a lot more like tournaments in those places, so it's a lot easier for those kids to get to those big tournaments. And it just becomes, if you think about it like that, it's just a lot harder for a kid like Justin to get on to go take an 8-hour drive to Chicago, or to take a flight to San Francisco, or to get to some of those like tournaments where you're really going to get showcased. And I mean, that's a whole other podcast, right? If you think about like all the problems with junior golf and how you actually get on the radar and all that stuff, it takes a while. But anyways, so that, I obviously loved that job, as you can tell from my voice. That was very fun, covering that and getting to know a lot of those people. And shortly after that, I worked there for about 2 years, and then started working for the PGA Tour, which was in Ponte Vedra Beach, Jacksonville, Florida area. Worked there for 6 years or so, 5, 6 years, something like that. And while I was there, I was doing a little bit of everything. It was kind of awesome. It was right as social media was getting started. So I think my job technically was social media coordinator. And in those days, it was like, just as Twitter and Facebook and Instagram are kind of like not really getting off the ground, but like brands are starting to get involved, and especially like very slow moving brands like the PGA Tour are starting to get involved. And so it was kind of like, they'd have all these meetings with kind of higher ups and stuff like that. And it was almost like a token, like, oh, make sure the social media team's there. Like, apparently this is a thing we got to be doing now. And so I got to like be in all these pretty high level meetings and just learn a ton about how the tour operates, how sales works, how players' relationship with the tour works, how the players travel, how the tournament sponsorships work, like all of those things, just by being in all those meetings. And not only that, but again, it was like very early days, and my background was like writing, so I was like a journalism major. So it was fine to work at Golf Week, and it was fine to kind of like craft tweets. But then all of a sudden, as the social platform started to change super rapidly, it was like, oh shit, I should probably learn like, you know, what exposure means in a camera, and I should probably learn like how to edit a video, you know, even a 15-second video. And so I kind of just all that stuff layered on top of itself to the point where I was kind of starting to realize, like the way I've always kind of said it is starting to kind of realize like there's golf and there's pro golf. And I think I really, really like golf. And, you know, the PJ Tour is awesome, and it was a great place to do a lot of amazing things and travel and meet people and whatever. But I was kind of hitting a point where I was like, man, I kind of just want to go see the rest of the golf world and really focus on like what I love about the game rather than just the pro game. And so kind of started to get an itch in the back of my mind. I'm like, man, I've seen these no laying up guys, and I listened to their podcast, and man, it really seems like we could do some fun stuff travel wise, and you know, try to do a lot of other golf, not just pro golf things. And so put a bug in their ear about that, and ended up jumping off the cliff in 2017 to work with them, and kind of the rest is history.
Wow. So you weren't part of the original No Lane Up set, because I always assumed you were there from the beginning.
No, they all started in like 2014, I believe. And I always like to joke. I mean, I think I was probably one of the first 10 listeners of their podcast, just because it's so in my wheelhouse. And doing the social media stuff for the tour, I was kind of focused on like, okay, what other, you know, social media outlets are there, and what other, you know, kind of media companies are starting to emerge, and basically like who's like lighting us on fire on a weekly basis. And it turns out No Laying Up didn't like that decision, kind of stuff. And so they were very much on my radar there, and I just got to know all the guys. Like, it's really funny. I remember being at the Open in 2015. It was the first time I'd ever gone to the Open, and I met Solly there. And we were walking around the golf course for, I don't know, probably 5 hours, 6 hours before either of us realized, like, oh, I guess we've never met in person before, have we? Just because we had like, you know, been talking so much on DMs and text and WhatsApp and stuff, and just kind of became really good like friends from the internet. It was the same with Tron, same with Randy, same with Neil. And so yeah, I wasn't there at the beginning, but you know, it's kind of felt like since 2017, like before I jumped on, basically they weren't doing any video stuff. So I was there at the beginning of the video stuff, and kind of there to be on the podcast as it kind of has grown into what it is now.
Was that your opening gambit? Was it? Did you message them and say, I'll come on board, I'll just take care of your video, it'll all be okay? Yeah,
exactly. No, well, it's funny. Going back to the first thing I said was like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. So, you know, you could probably hire somebody else that's much more knowledgeable in all of this stuff. They probably couldn't have afforded to pay them anything, because I think I was willing to take a pretty hefty pay cut to go work with them. But yeah, that was kind of the sales pitch. Was like, you know, the first big thing we did together was, okay, I think we should do this like golf travel thing. Golf's obviously a very visual game, and all the travel stuff that's out there is all like, you know, tourism based, and, you know, shout out to this course for paying us to come out here. Isn't it amazing? This is beautiful. It's all just like very advertorial stuff. And actually the first big thing we did was a friend of ours, Zach Blair, who plays on the PGA Tour, was getting ready to go play the Australian Open in the off season. And he was like, hey, he's like an architecture sicko, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna play, and we're gonna wrap up on these dates. Like, why don't you guys meet me in Melbourne, and we'll go play Kingston Heath and Vic and Royal Melbourne and all these places. And I was like, all right, cool, let's make that. We've been talking about doing this travel series. Like, there we go. Like, I know none of us really know how to use cameras, but like, why don't we? I don't know. We could just shoot it on our cell phones, and we'll come back and we'll just edit it into whatever it is. And it just ended up working out. So that was the first season of Tourist Sauce that we did, and now we've just wrapped up our 8th season, which was in Scandinavia. So that's how it started, and that was kind of the big sales pitch, and we've gone on to do a bunch of other stuff since then.
It's moved on so much, hasn't it? When you look at, obviously when you were speaking this afternoon, I sort of flicked on, watched some of the early stuff, and you look at how much it's moved on. You must sit there and, I don't know, like the production quality is one thing, but I suppose there's a whole other aspect that the viewer doesn't see necessarily, like the course selection. How much of it is important to look at the courses you're going to and the culture and everything, because very easily you can kind of tick off really big headliners, can't you? You've talked about it there, Sandbelt, boom, there we go. Then we go to Scotland, we go and play the big ones over there. Then we go to Ireland, and it's like, actually, you kind of almost just ticking through lots of really big courses and big areas. So going to Scandinavia, where you can go and look at the whole cultural aspect, and it being more of a travel series, I guess that was quite refreshing, right?
Totally. And that's where I would give Tron a massive amount of credit. He does a lot of the planning for that. And he's kind of like our conscience on that front of just like, man, it would exactly what you're saying. Like, it would be so easy to work with travel bureaus and work with, departments of tourism and all of those things to just say, hey, why don't you come here and tick off the biggest and the best names? And I don't know. I just think that gets like very soulless very fast, right? And you're almost kind of just like, it's just not the same thing. And I think that's kind of speaks a little bit back to what I was saying at the beginning, where if this thing is going to work, like, all of those headlines are great and all of the recognizable names are awesome, but I think the stuff that, I won't say the majority of people, but the stuff that our hardest core fans tend to enjoy the most is the stuff that is like, man, I've never heard of that place, but it was really fun to just like watch a buddy's trip, go experience it for the first time. So like a place like Cullen would be a great example of a place in Scotland that, we went to Royal Dornoch and we went to the Old Course, and those were amazing. And they probably have, I haven't even checked, but they probably have more views on our YouTube channel. But like, when I think back on that Scotland trip, like, what I enjoyed the most was going to Cullen and going and seeing like, oh my God, I've never heard of this place. And it looks like Jurassic Park. And there's these like big rocks just growing out of the ocean. And why did like
it's everybody insane golf course, isn't it?
It's unbelievable
place.
Unbelievable. Like, everybody should know about this place. And that's where I like get the most satisfaction is including those places. And that's where Tron is like so good at getting his arms around the entirety of a golf landscape and making sure that, yes, like, we are like, the Scandinavia season we just did, like, Brohof Sloot, like, that hosts the, whatever it is, the Scandinavian Masters, and they host I think they had a Solheim Cup back in the day, and like it was kind of built to be a Ryder Cup course. Like, that's the one that maybe people have heard of, but a place like Visby or a place like Fjällbacka or these places that are just like way off the beaten path are the places that you get to and you look around and you're like, God, nobody would have seen these places otherwise. Not to be kind of, pat ourselves on the back too hard, but it's like, that's the stuff that's most exciting to me. Because like, if you can, going to the Old Course is amazing. It's my favorite golf course in the world. Like, I don't think I probably need to tell you guys anything about the Old Course, but it's like, it's really cool that like you can't really find too much on Cullen or on some of these other places without, kind of the initial stuff that we did there, which is really cool and very satisfying, because it can, as you guys know, I'm sure, getting deeper into it, like, it's kind of a grind. It's not, you get through the first couple years you're just kind of like running on pure adrenaline, right? And like, oh my God, this is amazing. We get to film ourselves playing golf. And then you start to realize like, oh God, no, like every time I'm playing golf, I have to film myself, sort of a feeling.
It's like lockjaw, isn't it? You kind of end up, I like, Tom's always said lockjaw, like you bite off so much, like it's obscene. You get yourself into a complete pickle. You're totally behind on deadlines and when you want to push this stuff out. And then the next year comes around and you're like, oh, let's just do the same again. We can do 36.
1,000%.
It's like when you're a kid and you try and see how many sweets you can fit in your mouth at any one time, and you're there and you like literally can't breathe, and then like you wait a few days and all you can remember was the taste of the sweet. It wasn't the pain. It's like the sweet tasted amazing.
That's 100% right. Yes. And so trying to figure all that out and figure all the processes out and figure out how to, because I'm sure you guys feel this with the stuff that you put out, which I love watching, by the way. I should have said that at the beginning, but it's not really like you can just dump it to another editor, right? Like that's kind of the other thing that I think people don't necessarily realize, not to get too deep in the weeds on hashtag the process here, but I think a lot of people are like, oh, just freelance it, just give it to another editor. It's like, well, it's really hard to get somebody who like wasn't on a buddy's trip to really capture the soul of like what it's like to be on a buddy's trip. And that editor has to be somebody who knows us, who knows our sense of humor, who knows all the inside jokes from the 8 years we've been doing this, who knows, why the second hole at the old course has like so many different options and strategy, and why that's important, and why this shot's more interesting than this shot. And like those people don't really grow on trees. So you got to kind of like either do some of it yourself, or you got to like slowly ramp up finding people that, you really trust to do that stuff. And that's why our team has just like grown very, very slowly, and why the people that we do have now, like Ben and Cody and Casey and people like that people may have seen kind of in the background of our stuff are so hard to find, and why we're so thankful for finding them, because it's not easy to do.
I think you can outsource the filming more than you can outsource the editing.
Totally. Yeah. I think that's
mash
right.
it together in post, but like if they don't see it the way that you want to envisage it in your head, it's just like you can give them the best footage. A bad editor, you give the best footage and they'll come up with something absolutely awful. But you can take some fairly substandard footage, and as long as you've got a good editor, you can generally make things work.
Yeah, that's kind of how we found it as well.
So how many guys have you got on your team now then that do all the filming?
So everybody kind of does a little bit of everything. So there's 8 people on our team now. So if you've listened to the podcast, you've probably heard me, Tron, Solly is kind of our main host who's on every podcast, and Randy and Neil. And the way we started out was sort of like everybody just passed the camera around, and if somebody's got a cool shot that looks worth filming, somebody grab the camera and shoot it. And that was like really great for a very long time. I think for, again, getting kind of into the weeds here, but like for what you were saying about editing, like those first couple seasons that we did, it was really, really hard when you don't have kind of a storyline. You don't want to like pre-produce the storyline, right? Like you don't want to say like, okay, we're going to show up at this place on the other side of the world, and here's our rigid plan of how it has to go, and what we're going to shoot and what we're not going to shoot, and here's how we're going to edit it 6 months in advance. Like obviously you don't want to do that. You got to keep the fluidity and kind of some of the organic nature, because that's what everybody loves. But at the same time, if you don't have any plan and it's just like shoot everything and the editor will figure it out, like that's where all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, we got to release this when? Like I need a month to do all of these, because you don't really have a story in mind. It looks like I'm touching a nerve there between you two. But
massively. Tom just hates it. Honestly, he's such a prima donna, I can't tell you. Guy's insane to deal with.
It all kind of falls on the editor to basically like, okay, there is no story. So like now we just need to figure out like, based on this person accidentally said this on the 4th hole at Barnboogle Dunes. Okay, maybe there's something we can pull on there. And then maybe that'll call back to this thing that somebody said, 6 hours later. And maybe those two things can fit together. Like it just gets really hard to just pull that out of thin air. And so we did that kind of the first like maybe 4 seasons of our travel series. So we went to Australia, which again was like pure adrenaline, just, oh my God, I can't believe we're here. That was kind of the story. Scotland was season 2. That was a bit of the same thing. Just like, I can't believe that we're in Scotland, and oh my God, this is where the game started. And there's plenty, you can kind of accidentally just pull something out of Scotland. California, we went up the California coast from LA to San Francisco, and we were all stuck in an RV together. So that was kind of where most of the drama came from, was just trying not to murder each other in the RV. And then Ireland was a little bit another kind of like, oh my God, we're in Ireland. Like this is so crazy. And where it really like started to bump up against the, okay, we might need a little bit more structure here, was when we went to the Carolinas with season 5. And it was a place kind of all of us had been before. So it wasn't really like, you didn't really have that adrenaline. It was at the end of a really long year. We were kind of trying to, again, like you guys said, a bit of lockjaw, trying to fit it in. And so we were kind of like, all right, well, why don't we institute like more of a season long structure? Because the way that we always think about it, and I don't know if you guys do it the same way, is like there's kind of almost like 3 levers that we can pull on every episode, and like the levers are always going to add up to 100, right, or add up to 1, or whatever. But there's kind of like the golf course architecture lever, there's like the competitive golf lever, and then there's like the miscellaneous lever, and that might be us going to a bar or running into some local or having some travel, kind of excursion, adventure, whatever. But you never quite know. So like when you're at the old course, it's like, oh, all of a sudden the like golf course architecture ramps up to 90 and the other 2 are like 5 and 5, right? Mm-hmm. Or if you're at a place like Cullen, it's like, okay, well, we don't really need to talk about like the strategy of playing around these rocks. So let's just ramp up like the miscellaneous category. You know what I mean? And so that's where we've kind of tried to get with a lot of these other seasons, is like we have a through line of competition, which is more for like the structure than for, thinking that our competition is like the most important thing in the world, and that anybody like really cares about it. It's more just that like we need to have some sort of backbone through this thing, so that like if those other 2 pillars are not there, at least we have an 18-hole match that we can fall back on. And we kind of know that like at least we can kind of zero in on like Randy is playing against Tron, and let's follow the birdies and bogeys of that, and the other stuff we can kind of like slot in as needed. So
I suppose it kind of gives you your own lane then as well, doesn't it? So it's like, if you're playing somewhere and you've got a match, it's like, I know I've got to do that today. That's my job. I'm going to go on with it, Which that's where it's like you're all waving cameras around and just pointing them in different directions. Yeah, it's crazy.
Which I think has made it more fun, and that's why I was trying to trace my footsteps back to how I even got to this point. And I remember you asking about like, how do we film everything? So that's, now that we've hired Ben and Cody have come with us on the last 2 trips. And it's just been night and day difference, where, like you're saying, like it can be, again, I'm sure you guys have felt this. It's tough, especially on the back end of a 2-week trip, for like, okay, be hyper aware of the history of the golf course, be hyper aware of the architecture that you're playing, be hyper aware of when you need to pick up a camera, be hyper aware of making sure the mic packs are on, make sure that the thing's in focus, make sure you're not on slow-mo, and also like be super engaging in front of the camera. Like it's a lot to manage. And so now that we have some help, which again, like I said, is very hard to find, but now that we have a little bit of help, it's much easier to kind of be like, okay, Randy, your only job for the day is just be on. Like you are playing golf on camera, and you need to be in a good mood, and you need to be ready to go, and you need to, pretend like you care about the match, because people, we want people to kind of like feel like the outcome is important, and vice versa. It's, Neil, you are not on camera today, so I just need you researching this place before we get there, making sure you know how to tee people up for questions, all that. And so we're just incredibly, incredibly lucky that all 5, I guess 8 kind of people on our team are willing and able to kind of slot into those different roles like pretty effortlessly. So that's kind of our advantage over everybody else, I think.
I want to get into the depths of Scandinavia shortly, but I'm just going to get mega deep. Just one last super deep question. Do you think
this has just turned off about 90% of the listenership now? They've got no interest in color grading. So here we go.
Do you think the filming, and like you just said, and having to be switched on all the time and all that sort of thing, do you think the filming has affected your relationship with golf in a positive way or negative way?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's been both a positive and a negative, where I think it's been really, really hard for me to feel like playing recreational golf, like without cameras, because it's a lot of times it is, we go on these world-class trips and it's amazing. And the positives is that I've now seen more golf courses than I can remember. And I have all this experience to draw on, and, kind of builds you this like bevy of context in where you can actually like feel confident saying, no, I think this golf course is better than this golf course for this reason, and this is what I loved about this feature, and I wish they would do that here, and blah blah blah. I think it just raises your floor of context, right? And I think that trickles into the pro game. I think it trickles into travel. I think it trickles into like a lot of different things. And then negatively, it has been a lot of like, okay, we go on these big long trips. They're very exhausting because you're filming the whole time. And then when we come back, I mean, we started editing the Scandanavia stuff in, I don't know, late September, something like that, and finished Christmas. And so it's like, all right, for 12 hours a day, it's like all I'm doing is just like watching golf shots. And really? Then when I'm not doing that, it's like we're watching, and this is again like, wouldn't trade this for anyone or anything. So please, don't weep for me watching.
There's no
so
violins.
Much golf.
Don't worry. There's no violins playing. You're okay.
But it's like, okay, well then whenever that's not going on, then like we need to be watching and following pro golf to talk about it on the podcast. So then it's like, okay, you've got a Saturday morning, where you can go do anything. It's like, yeah, golf's not like super high on the list, I wouldn't say. I'd kind of rather just like get a coffee with my wife and hang out or watch a movie or, whatever. So there's been a little bit of overload from that regard, but I think I'm also starting to, just by getting more help and getting more resources and having everybody on the team kind of like more comfortable picking stuff up and dividing and conquering, like able to kind of almost be more like a producer on a lot of projects. So like we did a video last year. One of the things I think I'm like most proud of last year was we did a video on this place, Aiken Golf Club in South Carolina. And
yeah, I played it. It's great.
So
really
cool,
good place.
Right?
Really
and I am very proud to say, like, I've never been to that place. And we produced this like amazing, 30-minute video on this guy, Jim McNair, and his whole vision for it. And that was purely just Tron and Matt Golden, who I should have mentioned earlier is like the biggest, probably the biggest help that I have on putting a lot of this stuff out. He's been with us since season 1 of Tourist Sauce. He kind of sent me an email, was like, hey, I'm a video editor, and like my specialty really is just taking like a big pile of unorganized footage and spinning it into like a story. I was like, oh my God, buddy, do I have something for you?
I have some ideas.
Yeah, exactly. And so he's kind of been with us since then, which has been awesome. But that was Tron and him that totally worked on that. And I was kind of on the front end, like, hey, here if you need me, but it seems like you guys have it. And so that's kind of what we're trying to get to, is like being able to divide and conquer that stuff a little bit more. We did another thing last year on sand greens, golf courses in Kansas.
That was a really nice film. That was really
Thank
cool.
you. Yeah, which again was like we worked with
really
a guy named
different, quite arty, wasn't it? It was really different. It was really cool.
I'm not saying that this stuff's not usually arty, but it was,
no.
It did sound like a nag,
better.
didn't it? That's like when you talk to a girl in a bar and say, those are great earrings. My mum has.
No, I noticed everything was in focus. Was that a conscious change for you guys? No, but we had that was a guy named Liam Tangum, who was like a film school grad, like a young guy that just graduated from film school in LA, and he lived in Atlanta. And he's like, every time I drove between Atlanta and LA, I'd go by all these golf courses. And so that was, again, kind of one that I was able to be more like EP on, and just like, hey, almost more like client work, just like, hey, change this, and maybe this frame doesn't quite work, and can we do this, and blah blah blah. And that has energized me so much more in the past year of not feeling like I need to do everything beginning to end, and kind of sharing the load with everybody else has made golf a lot more fun again. So that's something I'm looking forward to in 23 here.
You mentioned Aiken. Look, my experience of golf in America is not huge, but that's one of the courses I played. And as a municipal course, my understanding is that is right out there as the quality of municipal golf that you can get in the US. Like, oh yeah, it's kind of revered. Obviously, I don't know how much of this sort of links into Strapped and the stuff you do there, but I kind of get the sense that real cheap golf in America to find really good cheap golf is extremely hard. Whereas I feel like there's so much of it over in Britain. And when we talk about, how do you piece together an itinerary in America for $500 for 4 courses? Everyone's like, yeah, you can't do it. It's like pointless. Totally. Is that true? Or, is that just not digging hard enough? What's your take?
That's 100% true. I mean, there's always like where we kind of started with Strapped. And I mean, we started with it a couple years ago. And for anyone who doesn't know, the premise is basically we have two guys, Randy and Neil. Their goal is to put together a 3-day, like 2 nights, 3 days golf trip. Got to play 3 rounds of golf on $500, and that has to pay for lodging, golf, food, booze, whatever pops up. And granted, we started that a couple years ago, and inflation has made that even tougher these days. But yeah, it's tough, man. And we started that out trying to really find like architectural gems, and I think we found a lot of good ones. I mean, the places we went in Iowa were legitimately great golf courses, all for in that kind of like $25-$30 range. And
Wow.
there are parts of the country where it's easier to do that. I just moved to Milwaukee like 5-6 months ago, and it's funny talking to the real estate agent. He was kind of, I had already been sold on Milwaukee. I love Milwaukee for a lot of reasons, but he's like, yeah, I mean, we just have so much like great park district golf, and like, it's almost kind of overwhelming. You don't really know where to play. And I was like, wow, that doesn't exist anywhere else. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, no, that's pretty much impossible to find. He's like, oh, I guess, I don't know. I've never thought about that. I guess I'm spoiled. I'm like, okay, well, I think this is the place I need to be then. But you can find it. The point is, you can find it in the Midwest. You can find it in kind of some of the more rural places where just cost of living is less. Yeah. But I mean, trying to do that in, we're kicking around these ideas of like, where else can we go where it's even like possible? I mean, trying, especially in the winter now, it's like, all right, well, we're basically limited to like Florida, which we already did, Texas, Arizona. It's like Arizona is like, it's impossible to go do that, especially during the winter. Yeah, it would be like, there's no way. You can't really find anything really for less than $100 that's not, just doing 200,000 rounds a year kind of place, that's just like a complete factory. So that's the other thing that's made it really tough, is kind of the like COVID boom in golf is just, I mean, it's everywhere is just buzzing. Even we saw that in Scandinavia too. I mean, everything was just absolutely slammed. So yeah, it's good ultimately, I guess, for golf. But it's, again, kind of like, how long is that going to last? And are we just going to kind of repeat all the same mistakes?
And it's to what end as well, isn't it? I think, obviously, living over in Britain, you see it. The top end golf courses have gone up crazy, like the cost of playing them now, because there's so much of the American market that's willing to, they're kind of, they don't really care about cost as much, I think, when they're traveling. So then the domestic market's kind of out of it. And then, so everything's kind of shot up a lot.
Totally.
But when you talk about $500 for 3 days, 2 nights, it's like, yeah, do you know what? You could probably do quite a bit of that in Britain, but that's going to get less and less. It's just, it's the nature of the beast. It's strange, isn't it? Really, there's so many more playing the game, but costs are just going up crazy. Like I'm seeing that with green fees for sure.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. I think a lot of it's just the way, the different attitudes towards how land gets protected or preserved, or kind of the different trusts that a lot of these courses are built around. And, it's just so easy over here to, it's very, very difficult. And it's almost like the exception to the rule of like, well, why wouldn't I sell this to a developer to put in a shopping center or to put in an apartment complex? Or, it's just, you almost like the act of keeping something a golf course in a lot of places is just like kind of almost this Herculean effort. So it's kind of tough to watch. And that's I think that's what drives a lot of what we do is, and the golf course that I grew up at was one of those places you could go play for $30, and now it does not exist anymore. The place that Solly grew up at was the same thing. It doesn't exist anymore. And it's just kind of, I think we've all seen this. Yeah, I think we've all seen this like in the places where we grew up, and you see it every time you go home to visit your parents. And it's just kind of these constant reminders of like, all right, if these places are out there, like we need to get to them and, kind of use whatever platform we have to kind of show them off, because they're disappearing by the day.
So you've obviously just finished on the back of your Scandanavia tour, the latest era tour source, and it was fabulous. Congratulations on the whole thing. It was like you say, a slight paradigm shift in terms of what you were trying to achieve out of it. Kind of a bit more touristy than golfy. Why Scandinavia? Why the places you visited? What sort of caused that to come about?
Yeah, again, I think this was Tron really like pushing that idea and selling the rest of us on it, because it's not the easiest place to get to. And, it helps when he's kind of running, him and Cody are kind of running a lot of the logistics on it. which was great. But I think it kind of goes back to a little bit of what I was saying about Cullen, right? Where it's like, if you Google, Phil Baca Golf Club, I guess I haven't really done that, but you're probably not going to find a ton, right? And it's just really, really fun to kind of go there and plant your flag in a place that nobody else has really been. I mean, we did that in Oregon, and again, it was great to be at Bandon, and we did. I'm really pumped about like what we were able to do there, but so many people have been to Bandon and so many people have seen it, and there's so many great videos out there about it. And
it's not that's big a scoop, is it? It's not like
that stuff
is like Bandon's great. Yeah, we know it.
Exactly. Like that stuff is there if you want to see it. But I think it's more fun and kind of going back to what going back to like what I was kind of saying too about like the energy and the adrenaline of going to some of these places is Michigan was fantastic because I think we put together a great plan and we had a great mix of places, and it's really fun to go to both, like the Loop, which is the Tom Doak reversible golf course, is awesome to see, but it's also fun to go to Wawashkamo and go to like some of these places way off the beaten path, or go to like Grand Rapids was a great example of a place that Andy Johnson, the guy who runs the Fried Egg, has been telling us about for years. But like same thing, you don't find anything on Diamond Springs or Pilgrim's Run or the Mines or these like unbelievable golf courses that we've all since been back to even since then because we loved them so much. But the rest of it is kind of like, okay, well, we're in Michigan. Like we've all been to Michigan before, and everybody speaks English, and you go eat at, if you want, you can go eat at an Applebee's in the evening, or you can go to, whatever. It's not really like an exotic feeling. Whereas like Scandanavia was kind of one of those like, all right, we did Michigan last year. We did a really good job. We're all very pumped and proud of how that turned out, but like, let's get way out of our comfort zone and let's go like, raise your hand if you have any idea what golf in Scandinavia looks like. Okay, nobody raised their hand. Like, let's go find out. And I think one thing that, you mentioned it being a little bit more like touristy, which was definitely the goal, was, I think you go take a trip like that and golf is almost like secondary, which I think is fine, right? I mean, it's not like I think the golf courses were really, really good. I think it would be hyperbole to all of a sudden say like, no, truly like the world's best courses are in Scandinavia. Like that's not the case. And I don't even think anyone in Scandinavia would say that. We found some awesome ones. I mean, Visby is great. Brohof was very cool. Stockholm Golf Club was a really cool old Harry Colt design. But other than that, I mean, it's kind of like, no, they're very cool golf courses in unbelievable locations. And I think getting back to some of that, like season 1, season 2, like out of the comfort zone, don't speak the language, trying to figure it out kind of stuff was really energizing and really, really fun. So hopefully that came across a little bit as well.
That was kind of a cool thing for us. We recently came back from the Netherlands, and it's kind of the same. It's like, it's nice playing a great golf course, but then when you couple it with, it sounds so stupid, but a Dutch menu in the evening, or going to a different, something like cobbled streets and going to a bistro rather than, going to a British pub. The whole thing feels different. I do have one question, which is, I suppose, you guys obviously have a huge amount of pulling power now. Like, you've got a huge amount of influence. Your films are so popular. Do you ever have a bit where you're almost sort of mindful of how much you can put the spotlight on somewhere? So, I know loads of people have said to me, God, Visby just looks amazing. Like, everyone says, I want to go to Visby. And that's a direct result of your work. But sometimes, I guess, are you ever mindful that it's like, actually, this could bring quite a bit of heat or quite a bit of activity? The clubs might be really busy all of a sudden. Does any of that ever feature in your thoughts? Or, I'm not saying it should do, but do you get what I mean, right? Like, you get to a point of big influence, don't you, I suppose, eventually?
Yeah, I think so. And I think we've always hopefully looked at it as a positive. I mean, I say this for the 18th time on this podcast, but like Cullen's a great example of one that, or Brora is a good example too.
I get the impression you like Cullen.
I do.
Cullen
no, using that as like, I mean, that's the definition of what you're talking about, right? Is people had never heard of it, and all of a sudden like, oh man, I'm taking a trip to Scotland, and like I absolutely am going to add that. And I think for really small towns like that, like, I mean, they're just super appreciative, and like we still get notes from the people there and the people at Brora and the people at some of these like off the radar places that all of a sudden are like, man, they're like, I know it's kind of weird, but like there's not too many days that go by that somebody doesn't come in with a hat on or with a shirt on or whatever, which is unbelievably cool and something we try not to think about too much because it kind of makes your head spin a little bit. But I think that again, that's where I give Tron a ton of credit for that as well, of thinking through that mixture and making sure that, you know, we're always kind of delivering on all levels of golf, right? And making sure that these trips aren't just, you know, oh, if you're in whatever, you know, if you're in San Francisco, you really should check out Cal Club. It's like, oh, really? Interesting.
That's good, is it?
Yeah, you should check out Cypress Point if you're around there. That place is great.
It's great.
Yeah. So Tron's just really good at like being that backstop of like, okay, we have a lot of really good names on this trip. Like we need to mix in some other stuff. And I also think one thing that we're pretty conscious of is like, we do a ton of research on the front end to make sure that like before we go spend a day at a place, like it's probably a place that we're going to like and probably a place that other people we respect, you know, have really liked, or it comes highly recommended, so that we're not just showing up totally blind and, you know, gonna like not really like a place. Like the one place, I mean, I think it's pretty clear from watching the videos, but like when we went to Ireland, we went to Doonbeg and we're like, this is not really it. Like this isn't, it's a great piece of land, but
Why
the
was
golf
that
course,
then, do you think?
Just the golf course was not great. It was like overly punishing. We were looking for golf balls the whole day.
Very commercial as well, isn't it?
Super, yeah, very, very commercial. It just wasn't really for us. And I think you could, without us, you know, objectively kind of shitting on it in the video, because I mean, it is still, some people love it and some people just are like, man, the views at that place are unbelievable, and that's what I'm here for, and that's great too. Like, not gonna tell anybody how to enjoy their day out there, but for us, we're like, it's just not really my favorite type of place. And I think that came through a little bit on the video, and I think that's one reason why we're very diligent about, you know, going back to the earlier conversation about, you know, working with tourism groups or things like that. Like we try to avoid that at all costs, because the last thing we want is just like, you know, we'll set you up here and like you can talk about how awesome it is. We really, really, really don't want to be in that situation.
You're cornered then, aren't you? You're totally cornered, because you've got to say nice stuff about places you wouldn't choose to go. At least if you make a decision to go there, it's like, this is why I went there, and it kind of delivered. But there was also some bits like this which wasn't quite what I was expecting. You've kind of made the decision, you know, you're going to justify it in some respect.
So we try to be pretty diligent about that on the front end. And again, that's where Tron is so good at picking those spots. And I think, you know, I other than the Ireland, that one course in Ireland, I would hesitate to think of any places we've gone that don't just get full 2 thumbs up, like you should go check out this place if you're here. And that's because we've just done a ton of research on the front end to make sure of that fact.
So how do you find that? I mean, like I said, it's pretty, I think it's coming out pretty clear you like Cullen. How do you find Cullen? Because like we live in Britain, you know, we've actually been to Cullen. You guys, I think you guys sponsor like the 14th hole there, don't you?
I think so. Yeah.
It's got a little plaque on there. It's not easy to find Cullen, even if you know that stretch of coast up in Scotland. So how do you stumble across something like that? I know
again,
that you like it.
It's Tron. Tron's like a freak about, you know, what'd you do last night? Oh, I just got on Google Maps and I looked at every golf course in the state of Oregon. And I don't know, this one looks really cool. This one looks great. This one we can avoid, blah, blah, blah. And I think he gets obsessive about, I think there's a couple resources, like the top 100 golf courses website was great in Scandanavia and provided a ton of information. And you have to talk to him about kind of like all his ways he finds it, but I know that's really helpful. In the States, and I guess he's done the ones in UK and Ireland too, but the Tom Doe Confidential Guide is super, super helpful to go through and read Tom's thoughts on all these places. I know that's been a big help in the past. And then just like random friends that we have that are kind of golf sickos who take these trips as well. So like someone like Jim Hartzell, someone might recognize from our podcast and from Twitter and whatever. He's been to Western Scotland. He's like, honestly, probably has to be one of the foremost experts of on golf in Western Scotland in
Don't
America.
have a tee or anything around there. It's like,
Yes.
he's your guy. Yeah.
And he's been going there for 30 years, and he is an architect who lives in Alabama, and is just like, that's his spot. And any questions you have, let me know. Anybody you need to, run into, let me know. Michael Wolf, Bama Bearcat, is another one who's always on Twitter. He's super helpful on, weird places in Japan or Korea or stuff like that. Scandinavia was a great one, just because Tron's wife's family is all from Stockholm, and so like Per, who was in our episode 1 of our video, is a former. He played on the Scandinavian tour for a while, and he belongs to a couple of golf courses, and so he was a great resource. So it's just talking to people. I mean, there's not really like a big Google repository of like a list of here's a perfect thing for your tourist itinerary. So it's kind of something Tron just comes up with, and we all have so much trust in him that he puts together a great list, and we kind of don't even ask any questions. We kind of just, sounds good, let's go do it.
Not quite ready to push it out to Chat GPT just yet then.
Not yet.
Not just yet. I mean, it's been a blast. It's been great fun listening to this and catching up. I guess kind of quite a hot start on the filming front for the new year. Am I guessing you're going to be a busy boy this year? All the stuff now, the tight list, stuff out the plantation recently. I guess you're going to have your work cut out on the filming front.
Yeah, I think so. In a good way. I mean, we're trying to pick our spots and trying to really make sure that we're doing exactly what we want to do. And like you've alluded to a couple times, I mean, kind of accidentally here, we find ourselves in a pretty good spot where people will watch what we put out, and we want to make sure we're not putting out anything bad. And so it's been awesome to kick off the Titleist partnership. They've been such an awesome team to work with, and kind of, have full trust in us to whatever you guys want to do. Like, we're here to support it, not the other way around. So that's been really, really great. And to kick things off with, the Spieth and JT video was like, still kind of can't believe that even happened. It feels a little bit like a fever dream of the last week or so here. So
you guys are pretty big now. Do you still get pinch yourself moments like that?
Oh yeah. 100%. Totally. I mean, it's
because it feels like to the punter looking on, it feels like this is sort of all de rigueur.
No, we're I think very it's interesting. It's a good mix of like, when you like run into a tour player at the hotel lobby or something, it's not quite like, oh my God, I can't believe that person plays on the PGA Tour. Like, I think we're pretty comfortable with that, right, at this point. But like standing somewhere like Lofoten, like at 2 a.m. in the middle of the night, when you're like watching like this really incredible match between like two of your best friends, and I can't believe we're here to like film this, and the sun won't go down, and we have this unbelievable, like basically like a screensaver in front of us, like to ourselves. Like, that was like, I can't believe that's real life stuff. That was really, really cool.
Well, I think on that note, DJ, I mean, you've been an absolute pleasure to have on the podcast, and you've given us lots of good insights, and it's nice to finish on a good point. So thank you very much indeed.
Yeah. What else? Let me ask. What else you guys got coming up? I know you have the Amsterdam, Netherlands stuff. What else is on the list for you guys?
So we've got a few things coming up. We've got the Netherlands tour that is gonna start on the 17th of Jan for us. So there's gonna be 7 films in total coming out from there, and associated podcasts, which will start on the 17th of Jan for us. We've got a few left in the can that we need to do coming out the other side of that. So Gozik, have you heard of Gozik?
No.
Tron will have. I'm sure Tron will have probably stumbled across it.
Exactly.
Gozik and Almouth Village, which is the most ridiculous 9-hole course you've ever seen.
Unreal.
I think it's like the 5th or 6th oldest in England. Yeah, it's crazy. So we've got some stuff there, but we've got loads of other stuff with things like events as well. Like, events are quite cool. Obviously, being in Britain, it's so easy to kind of get people to somewhere because everywhere's like 2 or 3 hours away. So
right.
It's like we're going to hopefully press on with some event stuff this year. Yeah, there's a ton of stuff, but it's hard to kind of really get in front of it. I think maybe that speaks to the point of maturity in like kind of where we are. It's like a lot of stuff is, you tend to make decisions based on what's in front of you over the next 3 or 4 weeks. Usually stuff just appears out of nowhere, and then we go and do it, and it's really good. Yeah. Rather than I'm sitting here thinking, well, October's going to be great because October, I know we're doing X, Y, and Z. Like, I think the biggest thing for us this year will be Walker Cup. Like, there's no way I'm missing that Walker Cup at St Andrews. Like, that is absolutely circled. days either side. We'll do some events either side, meetups and all that kind of good stuff. I mean, the Open was great fun last year. The Open was great, but it's such a circus. Like, it's such a big circus and it's like, well, are we moving the dial on the Open? I'm not sure we are. So, whereas actually, if you're going to spend time at the Walker Cup, I actually feel like there's a real opportunity for us to do something quite cool and different there, perhaps. So, yeah, I don't know. You guys over in the UK at all before the end of the year?
Hopefully the Walker Cup. I mean, yeah, for all the reasons you mentioned, that without being like, if you're like a golf sicko pervert, like, I don't know how you can get too much better than the Walker Cup at the Old Course. That's without hyperbole, like about as cool as it gets. So hopefully
we can use hyperbole. It's entirely warranted. That
I think that's going to be great. So hopefully we get over for that. But other than that, it'll be a lot of Ryder Cup stuff. So I mean, we'll get over to Rome, I think, hopefully earlier in the year to kind of do some like preview stuff. And then we'll be over for the Ryder Cup. I know a group is coming over to Spain for the Solheim Cup, so I know that's all more like continental stuff. I don't know how much we'll be doing in the UK. Hopefully Tron's trying to put together a Scotland thing for the next couple months, but we'll see if that comes to fruition. I don't want to spoil anything for what he's thinking there, but that should be a really cool one. And then other than that, we're kind of same as you guys. Like, sometimes stuff pops up and you don't really expect it to. So
you're Seal Trap on Tourist Source Season 9, I'm guessing.
That's right. Nothing to be shared there yet.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Great to catch up.
This